Prepare to be terrified. In this chilling video, we count down the greatest horror movies of all time. From spine-tingling classics to modern masterpieces, we'll explore the films that have left audiences trembling in fear. Join us as we journey through the darkest corners of cinema history, highlighting the iconic moments, bone-chilling performances, and hair-raising scares that have defined the genre. Whether you're a horror enthusiast or just looking for a good scare, this video is your ultimate guide to the most spine-chilling films ever made. Grab your popcorn, turn off the lights, and get ready for a horrifying trip into the world of the greatest horror movies of all time. Let's go and find out the greatest horror movies of all time. Cape Fear, 1991. Martin Scorsese's psychological horror remake is incredibly effective and tense. Robert De Niro's performance is excellent. The Silence of the Lambs, 1991. This multi-Academy Award-winning film is widely considered to be one of the greatest films ever made. It was also a huge success. Hereditary, 2018. This independent horror film was an enormous financial success, and was also very well received by critics. The Blair Witch Project, 1999. This highly effective horror is one of the most successful independent films of all time. Made for $60,000 United States dollars, it made nearly $250 million United States dollars worldwide. The Shining, 1980. Stanley Kubrick's classic horror film stars Jack Nicholson. It contains some of the most memorable and frightening scenes in cinema. Psycho, 1960. Alfred Hitchcock's seminal classic horror film is widely regarded as one of the greatest and most influential movies of its genre. Alien, 1979. Ridley Scott's classic horror film was extremely successful both critically and at the box office, and led to several sequels. Get Out, 2017. The first film from director Jordan Peele was nominated for several Academy Awards, as well as being a huge critical and box office success. A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. Wes Craven's film was probably the most iconic horror film of the 1980s. It was also the first screen appearance of Johnny Depp. An American Werewolf in London, 1981. John Landis directed this comedy horror film, which was both a commercial and critical success, and is now viewed as a cult classic. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, 1920. A very early, silent, expressionist film, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is often thought of as the first horror film. The Birds, 1963. One of Alfred Hitchcock's best-known films, it is based on Daphne du Maurier's book of the same name, and is highly suspenseful. King Kong, 1933. The biggest of all monster movies, no, best of, would be complete without the inclusion of this classic horror film. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? 1962. This extremely dark psychological horror is all the more effective because of how much its two main stars, Joan Crawford and Bette Davis, hated each other. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1956. Based on a novel from 1954, this film was remade at least twice. It was selected for preservation in the U.S. National Film Registry. Halloween, 1978. Perhaps the most famous of all the slasher movies, Halloween is John Carpenter's most well-known film, with instantly recognizable music. Jaws, 1975. This Steven Spielberg film was the classic, archetypal blockbuster of its era. It made over $470 million United States dollars. Dracula, 1958. Christopher Lee appeared as the most famous vampire in the world in several of the Hammer films. This was the first. The Wicker Man, 1973. Originally a B movie, this classic British horror film has stood the test of time, and is still very highly regarded. Carrie, 1976. Brian De Palma's horrific tale of high school brutality has an enormous sting in the tail. It is one of the most iconic films of its decade. Nosferatu, 1922. The first on-screen depiction of Dracula was a silent expressionist film, which contains some of the most iconic imagery from early cinema. Midsommar, 2019. This recent horror film centers around cult practices. It was extremely well received by both critics and other filmmakers. The Bride of Frankenstein, 1935. Boris Karloff was a legendary horror actor, who appeared in countless classic horror films, including The Bride of Frankenstein. Scream, 1996. Wes Craven's darkly comic homage to slasher movies is full of genre in jokes. It was a great box office success, and brought the genre back to life. Suspiria, 1977. Dario Argento's classic horror film is brutal, vivid, and terrifying. Don't bother with the 2018 remake, which was a box office failure. The Dead Zone, 1983. Christopher Walken stars in David Cronenberg's psychological horror film. It received very positive reviews from critics. The Fly, 1986. Jeff Goldblum appears in David Cronenberg's visceral and imaginative horror film, which was his biggest success to date at the time of its release. Videodrome, 1983. David Cronenberg's bizarre masterpiece stars James Woods and Debbie Harry of Blondie fame. It is widely considered to be one of the best horror film of its decade. The Night of the Hunter, 1955. Robert Mitchum stars in Charles Laughton's classic film about a minister who becomes a serial killer. It was not received well at the time, but it is now viewed as a highly frightening classic. Thank you for watching. Please do subscribe for more information. Please do support us.